The wolf's jaws were inches from my throat when I remembered what the old woman had whispered. Don't become one. I could feel its breath, hot, rancid with fresh blood, steaming against my skin. Could see my reflection in those amber eyes that held nothing human, nothing that remembered my name or the vows we'd spoken 3 days ago. The silver chain around its neck blazed like captured sunlight, but even ancient magic couldn't stop what was happening. The man I'd married was drowning beneath fur and fury, and I was the only thing standing between him and the slaughter. My hand tightened on the chain, the relic my father had stolen, the one we'd reclaimed in the dead of night from an enemy camp. Iron burned my palm, but I didn't let go. This is what you came north for, I told myself. This is what being the Alpha's mate means. The wolf's growl vibrated through my bones. Behind me, I heard Constantine's sword leaving its sheath. Heard Marco shouting something I couldn't process through the roar of blood in my ears. But I didn't run. I'd spent my whole life being invisible, being nothing. Tonight, I would be everything, or I would die trying. If this story caught your attention, thank you for staying with me. Stories like this take heart to write, and knowing someone is truly listening makes all the difference. I write to stir something inside you. Romance, emotion, and moments that linger long after the story ends. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe, so these stories don't get lost in a sea of voices, and I can keep writing them for you. I was 7 winters old when I learned that prayers go unanswered on nights when the moon bleeds red. My mother knelt on stone that night, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles went white as bone. She whispered to gods who had long since abandoned our house, begging them to change my father's heart. I watched from the shadows as he returned from the northern campaigns with another woman draped across his arm like a trophy. The woman wore silk, while my mother wore shame. By morning, my mother had been moved to the servants' quarters, and I understood for the first time that love was a luxury afforded only to those born into the right beds. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst came when the howling started. It began as a distant sound, carried on the wind from the northern mountains where the Duke's fortress carved its silhouette against the sky. The wolves sang to that crimson moon, their voices rising and falling like a dirge. My mother pulled me close and whispered a warning I wouldn't understand until years later. When the Duke's wolves sing, she breathed against my hair. Someone's debt comes due. I didn't know then that one day, I would be the payment. 9 years had passed since my mother's death. 9 years of scrubbing hearths and swallowing shame, of learning that grief had no home in a house where I was merely tolerated. Alara, my father's voice sliced through silence like a blade finding flesh. I set aside the brush, wiped my hands on my stained apron, and rose with the practiced invisibility of someone who'd learned that being seen meant being hurt. Yes, my lord. He didn't wait for me to follow, just turned and walked. We moved through corridors thick with shadows, past tapestries rotting with age, through a keep that held winter in its bones even during summer's height. The solar blazed with firelight when we entered. Lady Emma sat in my dead mother's chair, her daughter Katya arranged beside her like a doll in velvet and pearls. Sit, my father commanded. Silence stretched until I could hear the fire's hunger, the rustle of expensive fabric, my own heart hammering against ribs that showed through thin cloth. You will be married 10 days hence, my father announced. The Duke Giovanni has demanded his tithe. The words didn't land at first. They floated impossible in the space between us. Lady Emma's fingers drummed against carved wood. The Duke requires a bride from our house, a blood price to seal the treaty your father's predecessor failed to honor. My mother, she meant my mother. Katya was promised, I said slowly. The Duke's herald came for her. Katya made a sound of pure disgust. I'm not marrying that creature. The Duke needs blood from our line, my father added. Any blood will suffice. Any blood. He'll kill me, I whispered. My father's expression didn't shift. Perhaps. But your death won't be our concern. The Duke is cursed, Katya said. More wolf than man when the moon waxes full. They say his last bride fled rather than face what waited in his bedchamber. They found her broken on the rocks 3 days later. I won't go, I said. The words escaped before wisdom could cage them. My father moved fast. His hand caught my arm, wrenched me from the stool hard enough that I stumbled. You will do as commanded, he said softly, dangerously. Every breath you've drawn in this house has been charity. This is how you repay the debt. I thought of my mother dying alone, of the scars Lady Emma's discipline had burned into the soles of my feet, of every moment I'd been invisible, unwanted, tolerated only because killing me would have been too much effort. "Let me go," I said. My voice didn't shake. His eyes narrowed. Then, surprisingly, he released me. 10 days. Make your peace with whatever gods still listen to bastards. On the 3rd day, the raven came. The bird was massive, black as fresh-turned earth, eyes gleaming with intelligence that felt almost human. In its talons, a small wooden box. My father opened it with hands that weren't quite steady. Inside lay a ring. Even from the doorway, I saw the dull gleam of iron wrapped around a stone so dark it seemed to drink light. Not silver, not gold. Iron, the metal that bound oaths and broke curses. "He sends his mark," Lady Emma breathed. Fear cracked through her voice. "Alara, come here." My feet moved before my mind objected. My father held out the ring. "Your hand." The iron was cold when he slipped it onto my finger. Heavy, heavier than metal should be. It fit perfectly, as if forged for me alone. The moment it settled into place, something shifted in the air. The raven released a single harsh cry and launched itself through the window. "It's done," my father said. "You're bound now." When I tried to remove the ring, it wouldn't budge. The metal had grown warm, almost alive, clinging to my finger with its own will. A blood bond, my mother's voice whispered through memory. The old magic. The kind that doesn't break. The seamstress arrived on the 5th day. Old woman with silver hair and eyes that had witnessed too much. Lady Emma had ordered a dress made, not from kindness, but because she refused to let the Baron's house be shamed by sending a bride in rags. Through the window, the northern mountains loomed closer than before. "You're thin," the woman observed. "Haven't been eating." She worked in silence. Then, quietly, "I made a dress once for another girl going north. 20 years ago, maybe more." My eyes snapped to her face. What happened to her? The seamstress's hands stilled. She never came back. The words settled over me like a burial shroud. "But," she added, "I heard she became something else up there. Something stronger than what she'd been before." When she finished, she placed something in my palm. A small iron needle, sharp and cold. "Keep this," she whispered. "Iron remembers oaths, but it also breaks them if you know where to press." That night, sleep was impossible. The iron ring pulsed against my finger, steady rhythm matching my heartbeat. Through the window, I watched stars emerge one by one, cold, distant, offering no comfort. A howl rose from somewhere beyond the keep's walls. I froze. The sound came again, distant but clear, carried on night wind. Not the howl of common wolves, too deep, too deliberate, almost like a voice calling across darkness. They were closer than 7 years ago. My mother's dagger lay hidden beneath my mattress, the only thing of hers I'd managed to keep. I retrieved it now, holding cold metal against my palm. If the Duke wanted a bride, he would get one. But if he wanted a victim, he would find something else entirely. I wouldn't go quietly to my death. Whatever waited in Ironhold, I would face it with eyes open and spine straight. I was my mother's daughter. But I was also my father's, and he had taught me, however cruelly, that survival meant being harder than the hand that tried to crush you. The Duke's men arrived at dawn. 6 riders mounted on warhorses black as midnight, armor dark and severe. They moved with military efficiency, their presence transforming the shabby courtyard into something suddenly dangerous. The guard's leader had removed his helm to reveal a scarred face and eyes the color of winter ice. "I am Raphael," he said, inclining his head. "Captain of the Duke's personal guard. I've been sent to escort you to Ironhold. How long is the journey?" 4 days by horse." My father produced the marriage contract. Raphael stepped forward, adding his signature as witness. Then he turned to me, offering a quill. I took the quill. My fingers trembled slightly as the nib hovered above parchment. I thought of my mother, of promises made beside her deathbed. But this wasn't about vows anymore. This was about survival. I signed. The moment ink touched parchment, the iron ring flared hot against my finger. I gasped as warmth flooded through my hand and up my arm. It felt like recognition, like something far away had suddenly snapped into sharp focus. "We leave within the hour," Raphael announced. My father didn't embrace me, didn't offer parting words. He simply watched as Raphael led me toward the courtyard. Lady Emma smiled. Katia looked away. I walked out of the only home I'd ever known without a single person bidding farewell. We rode north into rain, toward mountains that grew larger with each passing mile, toward a fortress I couldn't yet see but could feel through the iron ring burning against my finger. By midday, the road had dissolved into mud. The guards rode in formation, eyes constantly scanning the tree line. We passed the first marker, a stone cairn carved with 3 claw marks gouged deep into rock. The boundary, Raphael said. Beyond this point, we enter the Duke's territory. The pack. The word settled over me like frost. The forest grew denser as we climbed. The air changed, grew colder, heavier with the scent of something wild and animal. We were being watched. Don't stare into the trees, Raphael said quietly. And don't meet their eyes if you see them. My hands were numb on reins, body aching from hours in the saddle, but I refused to complain, refused to show weakness. The way station appeared suddenly, a low stone building built directly into the hillside. Smoke rose from a central chimney. Down, Raphael commanded. I tried to follow, but my legs buckled the moment feet touched ground. Only Raphael's quick grip kept me from collapsing into mud. The door opened before we reached it. A woman stood framed in firelight, old, bent-backed, hair white as new snow. Her clouded eyes found me and sharpened. So, she rasped. The tithe arrives. The interior was larger than it appeared. Fire roared in the central hearth. The smell of cooking meat made my empty stomach clench. The old woman pressed a wooden bowl into my hands. Eat, girl, you'll need your strength. I ate mechanically, too exhausted to taste properly. She doesn't look like much, one guard muttered. Neither did the last one, another replied. And look how that ended. Raphael's sharp glance silenced them. I set down the empty bowl. What happened to the last one? Silence fell. There was no last one, Raphael said finally. There have been others promised, he interrupted. None arrived. They fled, I said. The desperate ones last longer, the old woman said. The ones with nothing to lose and everything to prove. They don't run when the howling starts. She leaned closer. Tell me, girl, are you desperate enough to survive him? I thought of my mother dying alone, of my father's indifference. Yes, I said quietly. I am. We left the way station before dawn. As my horse passed, the old woman caught my stirrup. When the moon waxes full, she whispered, Remember, iron binds, but blood answers. The Duke needs a chain. Don't become one. Before I could ask what she meant, she released me and retreated inside. The second day's ride was harder than the first. The road became little more than a track worn into mountainside. Narrow, treacherous. On one side, forest pressed close. On the other, ground fell away into ravines so deep I couldn't see bottom. We stopped briefly at midday. Through a gap in trees, I caught my first clear view of Ironhold. The fortress rose from the mountain peak like something carved by giants. Dark stone formed walls that seemed to grow directly from cliff face. Towers jutted skyward like broken teeth. It looked less like a home than a prison. That night we made camp in a shallow cave bearing strange markings on the walls, claw marks. This is sacred ground, Raphael explained, a gathering site for the pack during full moon. But it's also neutral ground. The Duke wants you to arrive unharmed. Other guards settled into sleep. Fire burned low. How long have you served the Duke? I asked Raphael. 10 years. Since I was 15. And the curse. Have you seen it? His jaw tightened. Yes. What's it like? He stared into flames. Imagine being 2 things at once. Man and beast, fighting for dominance inside the same skin. The Duke maintains control most of the time. But during full moon, he becomes something else entirely. Something that knows you but doesn't care about anything except the hunt. And if I fail? Then the man you marry will disappear completely, and only the beast will remain. Why did he agree to this marriage? Raphael smiled grimly. The Duke doesn't agree to anything. He commands or refuses. This marriage was his choice. He paused. He's been waiting for you, specifically you. When the Baron's letter arrived offering his eldest daughter, the Duke knew your father would send you instead. The bastard. My breath caught. He asked for me by name. Not by name, by blood. Your mother was from the northern clans, wasn't she? I nodded slowly. Then perhaps the Duke knows something about your bloodline that you don't. Dawn came wrapped in mist. We'll reach the gates by nightfall, Raphael announced. We rode higher into country untouched by human hands. Trees grew sparse, twisted by wind. Boulders littered the landscape, carved with more claw marks, territory markers, warnings. At midday, we crested a rise, and the fortress revealed itself in full. Ironhold was massive beyond imagination. The outer wall was taller than my father's entire keep. Towers rose at intervals, tops lost in clouds. The gate was a mouth of black iron, but it was the bridge that made my breath catch. A single span of stone arched across a chasm so deep I couldn't see bottom, no railings, just smooth rock barely wide enough for 2 horses to pass. The dragon's spine, one guard said. The only way in or out. What happens if someone falls? No one knows. The chasm's never given up its dead. We approached slowly. Wind hit us immediately, constant shrieking force threatening to tear us from saddles. Mist roiled below. We were halfway across when riders emerged from fortress gates, at least a dozen, mounted on horses larger than our own, moving toward us with terrifying speed. Their leader pulled his horse to a halt directly in front of Raphael. He was younger than I'd expected, perhaps 30, with black hair and pale gray eyes that fixed on me with intensity that made me want to look away. I didn't. "Captain Raphael," the man said. "You're late. The roads were difficult." The gray-eyed man's attention hadn't left me. "So this is the Baron's offering." "This is Lady Alara," Raphael corrected sharply. "The Duke's betrothed." Something flickered across the man's face. The Duke didn't mention she had a spine. Then he smiled, quick, dangerous. "Follow me. He's waiting." We crossed the rest of the bridge at speed. Gates yawned open, revealing a courtyard paved in dark stone. And then we were through, and gates closed behind us with a sound like a tomb ceiling. I'd entered Ironhold. The courtyard was larger than my father's entire keep. Every eye turned toward me. The silence was absolute. I dismounted carefully but forced myself to stand straight. Let them look. I wouldn't cower. The gray-eyed man appeared at my side. "I am Marco, second to the Duke. Your chambers have been prepared. I want to see him." Marco's eyebrow rose. "The Duke will summon you when—" "Now," I interrupted. "I've ridden 3 days to get here. I won't spend another hour wondering what I'm walking into." For a long moment, Marco simply stared. Then, incredibly, he laughed. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what? Follow me." He led me through corridors carved from the mountain. We climbed stairs spiraling upward through the fortress's core. Finally, Marco stopped before massive wooden doors bound with iron. "He's inside," he said simply. "What should I—" "Don't lie to him. Don't try to manipulate him. And whatever you do, don't show fear. He can smell it, and it triggers instincts you don't want to wake." Before I could respond, he pushed open the doors. I stepped into a room that stole my breath. It was enormous. Windows ran along one wall. A fire burned in a hearth large enough to roast an ox. Furs covered the stone floor, wolf pelts, dozens of them. But I barely registered any of it, because standing by the window, silhouetted against dying light, was a man. Tall, impossibly tall. Broad shoulders strained against dark fabric. His hair was black as a raven's wing. "Come in," he said without turning, "and close the door." His voice was deep, controlled, carrying absolute authority. I stepped forward. The door closed behind me. Closer. I obeyed, boots silent on furred floor, until I stood perhaps 10 paces from him. "You're not what the Baron described," he said. Finally he turned. The breath left my lungs. Duke Giovanni was beautiful in the way predators were beautiful, all lethal grace and controlled power. His face was angular, aristocratic, with high cheekbones and a jaw carved from stone. But it was his eyes that froze me in place. Amber. Like flames caught in glass, and they fixed on me with intensity that felt almost physical. Not human eyes. Wolf eyes. "Lady Alara," he said, my name a low rumble. "The bastard daughter, the unwanted bride." Yes, I managed. He moved then, crossing the distance with fluid steps. He stopped close, too close, forcing me to tilt my head back. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked softly. "To anchor your curse. To keep you human. Partially." His gaze traveled over me. "But there's more. Then tell me." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. "Your mother was born in these mountains. Her grandmother was of the old bloodlines, the ones who lived here before the church came, before the curse. The blood in your veins remembers what most have forgotten. Understanding crystallized. That's why you're not mad that I was sent instead." "Yes." He reached out and caught my hand, the one bearing his ring. The iron flared warm between us. "The bond requires compatible blood. The Baron's legitimate daughter would have been useless. But you carry what I need. And what do you need?" I asked, proud my voice didn't shake. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw something vast and old and barely contained. "Control," he said simply. "Before I lose myself completely to the beast." He released my hand and stepped back. "The wedding will take place in 3 days. You'll have chambers near mine, servants to attend you, everything you require. But understand this. Once we're bound, there's no escape. The bond is blood deep and permanent. I understand. Do you? Because I will not be kind, Alara. I will not pretend affection I don't feel. You're here to serve a purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, you'll live out your days in comfort and isolation. The cruelty should have hurt. Instead, I felt something almost like relief. Good, I said. Because I don't want your affection. I want to survive. And if this bond gives me that, then I'll do whatever's necessary. Silence stretched between us. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, he laughed, a low, dark sound that held no humor. You really are different, he murmured. From what? From anyone else who's ever stood in this room? He gestured toward the door. Marco will show you to your chambers. Rest. Tomorrow we'll begin the preparations. I turned to leave, but at the threshold, something made me stop. Duke Giovanni? Yes, I won't fail you. Whatever this bond requires, whatever I need to be, I'll do it. When he turned to face me, his amber eyes burned in the firelight. I know, he said softly. That's why I chose you. My first night in Ironhold passed without sleep. The fortress was alive in ways my father's keep had never been. Distant howls, footsteps in corridors, the creak and groan of ancient stone. When dawn finally crept through the windows, servants arrived. 2 women named Marta and Bess. Good morning, my lady, Marta said, her gray eyes sharp. You didn't sleep. It wasn't a question. After they left, Marco arrived. Ready? He asked. Does it matter if I'm not? His lips twitched. No. But I appreciate the honesty. We descended into the fortress's heart. The air grew colder, heavier with the scent of earth and stone. The lower hall was the first structure built, Marco explained. The pack's ancestors carved it from the mountain itself, creating a space for rituals that couldn't be performed under open sky. The door swung open, revealing a vast chamber. The ceiling was low, oppressive. The floor was bare rock, and at the center was a circular pattern inscribed with symbols. 6 people waited inside. Lady Alara, one said, a woman with white hair braided to her waist and a face like carved oak. Welcome. I am Serena, eldest of the Ironhold pack. We oversee the blood rites that bind Alpha to mate. I stepped forward. What do these rites entail? Blood. But not simply spilled, mixed. Shared. Serena moved to the circle's edge. The bond between Alpha and mate is older than written history. Another elder spoke. The Alpha gives his blood freely. The mate accepts that blood, becoming an anchor, a tether to keep him from losing himself during the transformation. And if the mate refuses? I asked. Silence fell. Then the Alpha dies, Serena said simply. The curse consumes him, and what remains is something monstrous. So my choice is to bind myself or watch him destroyed. Your choice was made the moment you accepted his ring. What happens now is merely ceremony. Serena produced a scroll. These are the binding words. In the old tongue. You'll need to memorize them perfectly. The symbols swam before my eyes. Incomprehensible. You will. Your mother's blood remembers it. For the next hours, they drilled me. The pronunciation was harsh, guttural. But Serena was right. Something in me recognized the cadence. By afternoon, I could recite the binding words without stumbling. Good, Serena said. The Duke has carried this curse alone for 5 years. It's worn him down, made him harder, colder. The bond will help, but only if you're strong enough. What happened 5 years ago? I asked quietly. The elders exchanged glances. That is the Duke's story to tell, not ours. Marco reappeared. The Duke requests Lady Alara's presence in the East Gallery. The gallery was lined with portraits of Giovanni's ancestors. He stood before one near the end. My great-great-grandfather, he said, the first to carry the curse. By the 7th generation, the curse had strengthened rather than weakened. I am that 7th generation. And without the bond? I asked. Without the bond, I would have lost myself completely within another year. The elders told you what happened to my previous betrothed. Yes. Does it frighten you? I considered the question honestly. Fear stopped mattering somewhere around the 2nd day of riding north. Something flickered in his expression. There's something you should know about your lineage, Alara. Your mother's grandmother wasn't simply from the northern clans. She was pack-born. One of us. He paused. You carry wolf blood yourself. That's why the bond will work. That's why I chose you specifically. The world seemed to tilt. I'm part of this, not cursed, but connected to it. During the full moon, you'll feel the pull of it, the same call the pack answers. You won't transform, but you'll understand what drives us. Why didn't anyone tell me this before? Because if the Baron had known your true heritage, he never would have sent you. He'd have killed you as an abomination. The church hunts wolf blood. My mother, who'd been cast aside, who'd died alone, had she known? The day after tomorrow we'll stand in that circle and bind ourselves together. When it's done, you'll be mine in ways that transcend any legal marriage. His amber eyes burned. And I will be yours. I understand. For a long moment, he simply stared. Then he smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Yes, he said softly. I suppose we will. The day of the binding dawned gray and cold. Marta laid out garments I'd never seen, a dress of undyed linen, simple and unadorned. The ceremonial dress, she explained. You'll wear nothing but this. The binding requires you to come bare of everything except what you carry in your blood. When does it begin? At dusk, the day passed in a strange haze. I bathed, drank bitter tea Serena brought, sat by the window watching the sun crawl across the sky. As twilight deepened, Marco appeared. It's time, he said simply. We descended into the fortress's depths. The lower hall stood open, firelight flickering within. Torches burned around the stone circle. The 6 elders stood at the cardinal points, and at the circle's center stood Giovanni. He wore only dark trousers and boots, his chest bare, revealing scars I hadn't known were there. His amber eyes found me across the distance, and the bond between us flared hot. He felt my fear, and I felt his determination. Lady Alara, Serena called. Enter the circle. I walked forward until I stood facing Giovanni across the inscribed symbols. Are you ready? He asked quietly. No, I answered honestly. But I'm here anyway. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Serena moved between us, holding a silver bowl. The binding begins with truth. Giovanni, Duke of Ironhold, do you claim this woman as your mate? I do. Do you swear to share your curse, your burden, your blood? I swear it. Do you accept the responsibility of her life, her safety, her soul? I accept it. Serena turned to me. Alara of the Ferraro line, do you accept this man as your mate? I do. Do you swear to carry his curse, to anchor his humanity, to bind him to the world when the wolf rises? I swear it. Do you surrender your freedom, your future, your blood to this bond? I met Giovanni's eyes, saw the question there. The last chance to refuse. I surrender it, I said. Serena nodded. Then let the blood bond be made. She handed Giovanni a knife of black iron. He drew the blade across his left palm. Blood welled immediately, dripping into the bowl. Then she handed the knife to me. My hand trembled. I pressed the edge against my palm and pulled. Pain bloomed sharp and clean. My blood joined his in the bowl. Serena swirled the bowl, murmuring words in the old tongue. Then she dipped her fingers in the mixed blood and marked Giovanni's forehead with 3 vertical lines. She did the same to me, and where the blood touched my skin, it burned. Kneel, she commanded. Both of you. Face each other. We knelt on opposite sides of the circle. Join hands, left to left. Let the bond flow. Giovanni extended his bleeding palm. I pressed mine against it, and the world exploded. Before we go any further, if this story has pulled you in, if you feel the tension, the danger, the connection forming between them, stay with me. Because from this point on, nothing unfolds the way it should. His consciousness crashed into mine like a wave, overwhelming and absolute. I felt everything, the curse coiled in his veins like living fire, the constant battle to maintain control, the weight of 5 years alone. I felt his hunger for connection, for someone who wouldn't fear him. I felt his guilt over the woman who died, and his desperate hope that I might be different. And he felt me, my childhood terror, my mother's death, the years of being invisible, the determination that had become my armor, the loneliness that mirrored his own. Speak the vows, Serena commanded. Giovanni's lips moved first. I bind my blood to yours. I give you my curse to carry. I surrender my beast to your keeping. My turn. I bind my blood to yours. I accept your curse to carry. I claim your beast as my burden. The symbols between us flared bright. Then let it be sealed, Serena said. She poured the remaining blood onto the symbols, and the stone drank it greedily. Power surged through our joined hands, hot and violent and uncontrollable. I gasped, trying to pull away, but Giovanni's grip tightened. "Don't break contact," he ground out. "It has to complete." The power built, rising higher, filling the circle until I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but hold on. And then, suddenly, it was done. The power released, leaving only a warm hum in my blood. Giovanni's eyes met mine, and they were no longer just amber. They were mine, connected to me in ways I couldn't begin to name. "Rise," Serena said. "The bond is made, the curse is shared. You are bound until death, and perhaps beyond." We stood on trembling legs, still holding hands. The bond sang between us, strong and irrevocable. I was his, he was mine, and nothing would ever break what we'd just created. Giovanni finally released my hand. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been turned inside out and put back together wrong." "That's normal. It will settle." He flexed his hand. "The bond will be strange for a few days. You'll feel everything I feel." "What happens now?" "Now you rest. We'll marry formally tomorrow, the human ceremony for appearances. But the real bond?" He touched his chest. "That's already done." "And the full moon, when you transform? 2 weeks away. We'll find out then if the bond is strong enough." His amber eyes burned. "If you're strong enough." "I am. I hope so. Because if you're not, we both die." Through the bond, I felt Giovanni waking in his tower. Felt his immediate awareness of me. I couldn't sleep either. The connection was constant, not uncomfortable, but present. I rose and made my way through cold corridors to his tower. His door was ajar. "You can come in, Alara," his voice carried through the gap. "I can feel you standing there." I pushed the door open. Giovanni sat by the fire, still dressed, a book forgotten in his lap. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb." "You're not disturbing me." He set the book aside. "I was just thinking about whether the bond would settle, whether this constant awareness would fade." He met my eyes. "It's not unpleasant. Just new." I moved closer. "I feel it too. You, I mean. Always there, just at the edge of my thoughts. Does it bother you?" I considered lying, decided against it. "No, it's lonely in my chambers. I've spent my whole life being alone, and now that I'm not, the solitude feels worse than before." Giovanni's expression softened. "Now that you're not, the solitude feels worse than before." "Yes." He poured 2 glasses of wine, handing me one. "I wasn't sure you'd want company," I admitted. "You've been keeping distance since the binding." "Not because I wanted to. Because I thought I should. The bond is intense enough without adding complications." "Complications?" His amber eyes met mine. "I didn't expect to like you, Alara. The binding was supposed to be strategic, necessary. But you're not what I anticipated." My heart beat faster. "What did you anticipate?" "Someone frightened, compliant, grateful to be chosen." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Instead, I got someone who argues with Constantine, demands answers from Serena, and looks at me like I'm a man instead of a monster." "You are a man. I'm also a monster. The curse ensures that." I leaned forward. "The curse is a part of you, not the sum of you." He stared at me for a long moment. "How are you real? What? You've been here less than a week. You've bound yourself to a cursed duke, survived a blood ritual, and adapted to life in a fortress full of wolves. And somehow you sit here telling me I'm more than my affliction, as if it's the simplest truth in the world." "It is simple. I see you, Giovanni, the man who sent furs so I wouldn't freeze, who stands when I enter a room, who holds me carefully despite having the strength to break me. The curse is what you carry, not who you are." The silence stretched between us. Then Giovanni moved. He crossed the space and pulled me to my feet, his hands framing my face. "I'm trying very hard not to want this," he said roughly. "Not to want you beyond what the bond requires." "Why?" "Because wanting leads to needing. Needing leads to breaking. And I've spent 5 years building walls to avoid breaking again." I reached up, covering his hands with mine. "What if I'm not trying to break you? What if I just want to know you? Knowing me is dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. The bond, the curse, the full moon coming. But I'm not afraid of danger anymore. I'm afraid of spending my life bound to a stranger." Something cracked in his expression. "Tell me about your mother," I said softly. "The ring you gave me was hers. What was she like?" He exhaled slowly. "She was fierce. Born to the northern clans, she bonded to my father knowing exactly what the curse would demand. Did she regret it? No. She told me once that loving a cursed man was easier than loving a cruel one, that my father's wolf was honest in its hunger, while human men hid their monsters behind smiles. His voice roughened. She died when I was 12, but she made my father promise he'd find me a mate strong enough to survive what she had. And did he? Giovanni's eyes burned into mine. He died before he could keep that promise. So I chose for myself. You chose me. Yes. His forehead came to rest against mine. I chose the bastard daughter with northern blood and a spine of steel, the girl who'd survived years of cruelty without breaking. My breath caught. Giovanni. I'm trying not to fall for you, he interrupted, voice barely above a whisper. I'm trying to keep this practical, but you make it impossible. Then stop trying. I kissed him before I could think better of it. For a heartbeat, he froze. Then he devoured me. His kiss was nothing like our wedding ceremony. No careful control, no measured passion. This was hunger unleashed, 5 years of loneliness burning away in the space between breaths. I gasped against his mouth and he swallowed the sound, his hand sliding to my waist, pulling me flush against him. The bond flared hot between us. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Giovanni pressed his face into my neck. This complicates everything, he said against my skin. I know. The bond was supposed to be enough, clean, simple. Nothing about us is simple. He laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised. No, I suppose it's not. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. Stay, tonight, just stay with me, yes. He led me to his chambers. The space was sparse. Just a massive bed covered in wolf furs, a fireplace, windows overlooking the chasm. When he joined me, he pulled me against his chest without a word, one arm wrapped around my waist, his face buried in my hair. Thank you, he murmured. For what? For being brave enough to come find me. For not letting me hide behind practical excuses. For seeing me. I laced my fingers through his. I'll always see you, Giovanni, man and wolf, monster and mate. All of it. Through the connection, I felt his wonder, his disbelief that this was real. And beneath it all, the first tender shoots of something that would grow into love. We fell asleep tangled together, the bond humming contentedly between us. On the 7th day, Serena summoned me to the lower hall. The moon waxes, she said. Soon the Duke will transform. You need to understand what caused this curse, what made it worse. I thought it was hereditary. The curse is hereditary, yes. But 5 years ago, something changed. Something made it stronger, more difficult to control. Her ancient eyes bored into mine. Your father is responsible. The words hit like a fist. What? Come, I'll show you. She led me deeper into the fortress. We reached a chamber carved from raw stone, walls lined with ancient artifacts. Serena stopped before a pedestal at the chamber's center. It was empty. This is where the silver chain rested for 300 years, a relic forged by your mother's ancestors, the original northern clans who learned to walk between human and wolf without losing themselves to madness. My throat tightened. My mother's ancestors? The bloodline runs deep in you, child. Your mother's grandmother, her grandmother before her, they were the keepers of the old magic, the ones who understood that the wolf spirit wasn't a curse to be fought, but a nature to be balanced. Serena's hand touched the empty pedestal. The silver chain was their masterwork. It doesn't prevent transformation, nothing can, but it eases the violence of it. Softens the boundary between man and wolf. Without it, the transformation becomes agony, and agony breeds rage. Rage breeds loss of control. Understanding crept in. Where is it now? Your father has it. The room spun. 20 years ago, when your mother married the Baron, she took the chain with her. She gave it to him? Your mother was desperate for love. The Baron told her that if she truly loved him, she would prove it by surrendering her old clan's treasures, that keeping the chain showed she still had one foot in the north. I could picture it too clearly. She gave him the chain as proof of her devotion. And your father took it, locked it away, and told her he'd keep it safe. Serena's expression turned bitter. 2 years later, when she asked to see it, when she realized she was carrying northern blood in her womb, he told her he'd lost it. Lost it, I repeated, voice hollow. A lie. The chain is in his possession. Hidden away like all his other stolen treasures. The betrayal stole my breath. My mother died not knowing what she'd really given up, I said quietly. No, She died knowing exactly what she'd lost. Serena's hand touched my shoulder. In her final days, she asked the priests to send word north, to tell the old clans that the silver chain had been stolen, that it rested in the Baron's keeping, and that someday, perhaps through her daughter, it might return home. Tears burned my eyes. She knew about me, about my bloodline. She knew you carried the old magic in your veins, knew that if you survived long enough, the North would recognize you, would call you home. Serena's voice dropped. Your father never understood what he'd stolen. He didn't realize it was keeping the Northern Alphas stable. Didn't know that without it, the curse would grow stronger. How long has Giovanni known? 3 years. When Duke Alexei began positioning himself for territorial expansion, we investigated the Baron's holdings. That's when we discovered the chain's location. He took it, and that was why the Duke demanded his daughter as a prize to the claim. He used me, I said, voice shaking. Sent me here as payment for his crime. The pieces fell into place. That's why Giovanni demanded me, I said. Not just for my northern blood, but because I'm the rightful heir to the chain. My mother's daughter. The only one with a legitimate claim. Yes, the bond would have worked with any northern bloodline, but only you could reclaim what was stolen. I pressed my hand against the empty pedestal. And now he sold it. To Duke Alexei. He's using it to fund alliances against the very people it was meant to protect. Serena's hand touched my shoulder. But you are not responsible for your father's sins. The bond chose you because of your blood, not his actions. Through the bond, I felt Giovanni's sudden sharp attention. He'd sensed my emotional spike. Giovanni must hate me, hate that I'm connected to. Giovanni chose you, Serena interrupted firmly. Knowing everything, he could have refused your father's offer, could have demanded the chain's return instead of a bride. But he looked at your bloodline, your heritage, and he chose you. That should tell you something about what you mean to him. The door opened behind us. Giovanni stood framed in torchlight. Through the bond, I felt his concern. Leave us, he told Serena. She departed. Giovanni crossed to where I stood. You know about the chain. Why didn't you tell me? The words came out sharper than intended. Why let me bind myself to you without knowing my father caused this? Because it doesn't matter. His hand caught my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. Your father's crime is his own. You carry his blood, but not his guilt. The chain could have helped you. The chain is gone. Has been for 18 years. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. But you're here, and you do what the chain cannot. You anchor me through choice, through bond, through the northern blood you carry. I would rather have you than 1,000 relics, Alara. The confession hung between us. The full moon comes in 9 days, he continued. When I transform, the curse will rise stronger than you've seen. Without the chain to ease it, the wolf will fight harder for dominance. That's when we discover if you're truly strong enough to hold me. Through the bond, I felt his fear, not of the transformation itself, but of hurting me. I pressed my hand over his heart. Then we prepare. Tell me what I need to know. Training began the next morning with Constantine in the yard. By afternoon, I was bruised, exhausted, and barely holding my own. Enough, he finally said. You're learning. Not fast enough to survive a real wolf, but learning. That's when Serena took over. She led me back to the lower hall, had me sit in the circle's center. Close your eyes. Find the bond. I did, reaching for that warm presence in my chest. Good. Now follow it deeper. Past the surface connection, past his conscious thoughts, down to where the curse lives. I pushed deeper through the bond, past familiar warmth into something else. Something wild and restless, coiled like a spring. The wolf, not yet dominant, but there, patient and hungry. I gasped, trying to pull back. Don't retreat, Serena commanded. Touch it. Let it feel you. I forced myself to reach toward that wildness. The moment I did, it surged forward, not attacking, but investigating. Curious, possessive, mine, it seemed to say. Mate, anchor. Good, Serena said. That's the wolf's recognition of the bond. During the transformation, that recognition is your weapon. We worked for hours. Tomorrow, Serena said, we test you properly. The Duke has agreed to partially shift, just enough for you to practice pulling him back before the full moon. My stomach dropped. Tomorrow? You need to experience it before the real thing. The next afternoon they brought me to the training yard. Giovanni was already there, stripped to the waist. Constantine, Marco, and Raphael stood at the edges, ready to intervene if needed. The Duke will partially shift, Serena explained. Just claws, eyes, some of the wolf's instinct. Your task is to use the bond to pull him back. Giovanni's amber eyes met mine. Through the bond, I felt his reluctance, his fear that this would prove I wasn't ready. Begin, Serena commanded. Giovanni closed his eyes. I felt the curse surge through the bond, felt him lower the barriers he maintained constantly. His breathing changed, deepened, became harsh and labored. His hands curled into fists, nails lengthened into black claws. The muscles beneath his skin began to shift, bones starting to crack and reform. When his eyes opened, they glowed, pure amber fire, pupils elongating into slits. A growl built in his chest, low, threatening, inhuman. Now, Lady Alara, Serena said, pull him back. I reached through the bond. Giovanni, come back, I'm here. The wolf's awareness turned toward me, focused, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it surged forward. Giovanni moved, faster than anything human should move. One moment he was 10 paces away. The next, he was on me, claws extended, teeth bared. Pure predatory instinct. I froze. Terror locked my muscles, stole my breath. The bond shattered under the weight of my panic. I couldn't think, couldn't reach him. Couldn't do anything but stare into those glowing eyes. Constantine hit Giovanni from the side, a full-body tackle that sent them both crashing into dirt. They rolled, Constantine fighting to pin him, Giovanni snarling and snapping. Hold him! Marco shouted, joining the struggle. It took all three of them, Constantine, Marco, and Raphael, to restrain him long enough for Giovanni to claw his way back to control. When his eyes finally cleared, returning to normal amber, he shoved them off and staggered to his feet. His gaze found me, still frozen where I'd been standing. The look on his face was cold, distant. This was a mistake, he said, voice rough. You're not ready. The words hit like a slap. Giovanni, no. He turned away, breathing hard. I won't risk you. Won't risk everyone in this fortress because I was arrogant enough to think. He stopped himself. The binding was premature. We'll find another way. Shame flooded through me. Then teach me. Or admit you chose wrong. He looked back at me, and through the bond I felt his conflict. You have 6 days, he said finally. 6 days to learn what takes most people years. If you can't control the bond by the full moon... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. If I failed, they would put him down. And probably me with him. He left without another word. I stood alone in the training yard, trembling with shame and rage and determination. Serena approached quietly. Failure is part of learning. I froze. The moment he came at me, I froze. Yes. Because you've never truly faced a predator before. Your fear is reasonable, but reasonable fear won't save you during the full moon. You need to transform it into something else. Into what? Into certainty. Into the bone-deep knowledge that you are not prey. That the bond makes you his equal, not his victim. Her ancient eyes held mine. You have 6 days to believe it. Make them count. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, feeling Giovanni's presence through the bond. Distant, closed off, convinced he'd made a terrible mistake. The shame of my failure burned, but beneath it, something harder crystallized. I would not fail again. I would prove him wrong. Through the bond, I sent him a single wordless message, I'm not giving up. I felt his surprise. Then, faintly, something that might have been hope. The morning of my 3rd day of training, everything changed. I woke to chaos, shouting in corridors, boots on stone, urgency that made my heart race. Through the bond, I felt Giovanni's sharp alarm. Something was wrong. Raphael appeared at my door, scarred face grim. Come, now. The Duke needs you in the war room. What's happened? Duke Alexi's men didn't leave. They've been watching the approaches, mapping our defenses. And this morning, a messenger arrived from your father's keep. My stomach dropped. What kind of messenger? The kind that carries threats. My father had sold the chain to Alexi, the rival duke who wanted Giovanni to fail. It's a trap, I said. Yes. Giovanni's hands were braced on the table, knuckles white. Your father coordinated with Alexi, sold him the one thing that could ease the transformation, ensuring the night will be as violent as possible. 2 days? The timeline crashed into me. The full moon is in 2 days? Yes. And now Alexi has the chain. I can't attack him for it without appearing weak, without proving his point that I'm too unstable to lead. Through the bond, I felt his calculation. his awareness of how perfectly he'd been maneuvered. "There's more," Marco said. "Our scouts report Alexi's men have taken position in the Eastern Valley. Not an army, but enough witnesses to spread word of whatever happens tomorrow. If the transformation goes badly, Alexei claims the territory by right of conquest." I stared at the letter, rage building. My father had done this, had conspired to destroy the man I'd bound myself to. "We attack Alexei's position," Constantine growled. "Take the chain back by force." "That's what he wants," Giovanni countered. "An excuse to claim we broke the peace." "Then we do nothing?" Raphael's voice was sharp with frustration. "The bond, which I'd already failed once." Giovanni's eyes met mine across the table, and I felt his thought. She froze. "She's not ready. This is going to end in blood." Something hardened in my chest. "The bond will hold," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. All eyes turned to me. "Alexei and my father believe the chain is necessary. That without it, the transformation will be catastrophic." I met Giovanni's amber gaze. "Let them believe that. Let them position their witnesses and wait for the spectacle. We'll prove them wrong. And if we don't?" Marco asked quietly. "Then we improvise." I looked down at my father's letter. "My father thinks he knows me, thinks I'm still the frightened girl who scrubbed his floors. He doesn't realize what I've become." "What are you thinking?" Giovanni asked, and through the bond I felt his sharp attention. "My father mentioned the chain is with Alexei, but he didn't say where Alexei is keeping it." I traced the map. "If Alexei is positioned here with his witnesses, the chain must be somewhere else, somewhere he considers secure." "His camp," Raphael said slowly. "He's established a base in the foothills. That's where his supplies are, where his commanders stay, and where he'd keep something valuable he doesn't want damaged in potential fighting." I looked up. "The chain isn't in the valley with the witnesses. It's in the camp with minimal guard." Understanding flickered across Giovanni's face. "You want to steal it back?" "Not steal. Reclaim what was ours." I straightened. Alexei positioned his pieces, assuming we'd either attack the valley and appear unstable, or do nothing and fail tomorrow. He didn't account for a third option. "Which is, I go to the camp. Tonight. Retrieve the chain before the moon rises." I held Giovanni's gaze. "Alexei's watching you, not me. He sees me as irrelevant, the Baron's unwanted daughter, useful only for the bond. Let him keep thinking that while I prove him wrong." Constantine laughed, a sharp bark of sound. "The lady wants to infiltrate an enemy camp alone?" "Not alone." I turned to Raphael. "You know what it looks like? Where someone would hide it?" "Yes." "Then you'll come with me. We'll be less conspicuous than a full assault force." Giovanni was silent. Through the bond, I felt his conflict. The tactical part recognizing the plan's merit, the protective part rebelling against, sending me into danger. Especially after I'd already failed once. "Before we go any further, if this story has pulled you in, if you feel the tension, the danger, the connection forming between them, stay with me. Because from this point on, nothing unfolds the way it should." That night I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow I would ride into enemy territory, infiltrate Alexei's camp, retrieve the silver chain or die trying. And despite all my bravado, I was terrified. Not of Alexei, not even of death, of leaving Giovanni. The bond pulled at me. He was in his tower, awake and restless, feeling my fear. I rose and went to him. His door was unlocked. He sat by the window, staring out at darkness, a glass of wine forgotten in his hand. He didn't turn when I entered, but I felt his awareness snap to me. "You should be resting," he said quietly. "Tomorrow will be—" "I can't sleep. Neither can I." He set down the wine and turned to face me. "I keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong." I moved to stand beside him. "We've planned for every contingency. Raphael knows the terrain. I'm faster than I look. We'll be in and out before Alexei realizes what happened." "And if you're not? If they catch you?" "Then Raphael gets the chain back to you, and I improvise." His hand found mine, gripping hard. "That's not an acceptable outcome. It's the only outcome that matters. The chain has to come back. You need it for the full moon. I need you for the full moon." He pulled me to face him. "The chain helps, yes, but the bond is what actually holds me. You are what holds me." Through the connection, I felt the depth of his fear, not for himself, but for me. "I'm coming back," I said firmly. "You can't promise that." "I can, I do." I stepped closer until our bodies touched. I didn't survive years of my father's cruelty and bind myself to you just to die in some enemy camp. I have too much to live for now." His expression cracked. "Do you?" "You know I do. You can feel it through the bond. I can feel many things through the bond. But I want to hear you say it." My breath caught. We'd been dancing around this for weeks, but we'd never named it. "I love you," I said, the words simple and devastating. "I know we haven't known each other long. I know this started as obligation, as survival. But somewhere between the binding and now, it became real. The bond flared hot between us, confirming what my words declared. Giovanni's hands came up to frame my face, his touch shaking slightly. "Say it again. I love you. Man and wolf, duke and monster, every part of you." He kissed me then, not with hunger, but with something gentler. Reverent. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with emotion. "I've been trying not to say it," he admitted roughly. "Trying to convince myself this was still just the bond, just necessity. But I can't lie to you through this connection, and I can't lie to myself anymore." "Then don't. I love you, Alara. I think I started falling the night you came to my tower and demanded to know me. The night you looked at me like I was a man worth knowing instead of a curse to be managed." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "And tomorrow, when you ride into danger, you'll be carrying my heart with you." Tears pricked my eyes. "Then I'll be very careful not to damage it. Come back to me. That's all I ask. Come back, and we'll figure out everything else. I will." He kissed me again, and this time the gentleness gave way to urgency. Giovanni lifted me, carrying me to his bed. He laid me down on familiar furs and covered my body with his, the bond singing between us. "I'm going to make love to you," he said against my lips. "Slowly, thoroughly, so that tomorrow, when you're afraid, you can remember this. Remember us." Yes. What followed was tender beyond words. We made love like it was the last time, even though we both prayed it wouldn't be, storing up sensation and connection and love to carry us through separation. When we shattered together, the bond exploded between us, sealing something even deeper than the blood binding had. This was choice. This was love. This was forever. Afterward, Giovanni held me against his chest, his heartbeat strong and steady beneath my ear. "I'm terrified," he admitted quietly. "So am I. If something happens to you..." "It won't, but if it does..." His arms tightened. "If you don't come back, I want you to know, these weeks with you have been the best of my life. You gave me something I thought the curse had stolen forever." "What?" "Hope, joy, the ability to imagine a future that isn't just survival." He pressed a kiss to my hair. "You gave me love, Alara, real love. And even if tomorrow is all we get, it was worth it." I turned in his arms, looking up at him through tears. "Tomorrow isn't all we get. I'm coming back. And then we're going to have years, decades, a lifetime of this. Promise me, I promise." He kissed me again, soft, lingering, saying goodbye just in case. But I wouldn't let it be goodbye. I fell asleep wrapped in his arms, the bond humming with love and fear and desperate hope. And when dawn came and I had to leave, Giovanni walked me to the courtyard. He kissed me in front of the assembled pack, deep and claiming and heartbroken. "Come back to me," he whispered against my lips. "Always." I rode out with Raphael, the bond stretching thin but not breaking as distance grew between us. And through that connection, I felt Giovanni standing in the courtyard watching until I disappeared from sight. Felt his love and fear and faith in me. Felt him holding on to hope that I'd keep my promise. I would. Because I loved him too much to do anything else. The journey took several hours, moving carefully through darkness, avoiding patrols. By the time we reached the foothills where Alexi's camp sprawled, midnight had come and gone. Raphael secured the horses. "From here, we go on foot. Stay low, stay quiet. If I signal, you freeze immediately." I nodded, my heart hammering as we crept forward. The camp was larger than I'd expected. Dozens of tents arranged in military precision, guards posted at regular intervals. But Raphael had been right. Most of Alexi's force was positioned in the valley. This was a supply camp. We moved between shadows, using the terrain and darkness to mask our approach. My training with Constantine paid off. I knew how to place my feet, how to control my breathing, how to become invisible. The skills I'd learned scrubbing floors in my father's keep, all of it came back now. I'd spent years learning to be a ghost. Tonight, it would save my life. We reached the largest tent without incident, This is where Alexi's commanders stay, Raphael whispered. If the chain is here, it will be inside. Probably in a locked chest. How do we get in? He produced a slim blade. I pick the lock. You watch for patrols. I crouched in shadow while Raphael worked. Minutes crawled past. A guard walked within 10 feet of us, and I pressed myself against the tense fabric, barely breathing. The memory of freezing during training flashed through my mind. Not this time, I told myself. This time, I don't freeze. The guard passed. Raphael's blade clicked softly. We're in. Inside was sparse, a campaign table, maps, a chest bound with iron locks. Raphael went to work while I kept watch at the entrance. More clicking. More agonizing minutes. Then, got it. The chest opened, revealing contents wrapped in oiled cloth. Raphael unwrapped them carefully, and even in the dim light, I recognized what he'd found. The silver chain. It was beautiful. Links of metal so pure they seemed to glow, inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Old magic, northern power. I felt its presence like a physical thing, warmth radiating from the metal, calling to the northern blood in my veins. Raphael wrapped it quickly, securing it in a pack. Time to go. We were halfway back through the camp when everything went wrong. A shout rose from the command tent. Someone had discovered the theft faster than we'd anticipated. Guards poured from nearby tents, torches flaring to life. Run, Raphael hissed. We ran. Voices pursued us through the darkness. I heard arrows whistle past, felt one tug at my cloak. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. But I pushed harder, the chain's weight across my shoulders driving me forward. Raphael grabbed my arm, pulling me down a steep slope. We half fell, half slid into a ravine, rocks tearing at my clothing. This way, he commanded. Behind us, I could hear the search spreading. Torchlight flickered above the ravine's edge. We emerged near where we'd left the horses. Behind us, shouts grew closer. Raphael threw me onto my horse, pressing the pack with the chain into my hands. Ride hard. Don't stop until you reach Ironhold. What about you? I'll lead them away. Give you time. He slapped my horse's flank. Go. The Duke needs that chain by moonrise. The horse bolted before I could argue. I looked back once, saw Raphael mounting his horse, deliberately riding in the opposite direction, drawing attention with shouted challenges. Then I focused forward and rode like death itself was chasing me. The chain bounced against my back with each stride. Through the bond, I felt Giovanni stir, sensing my fear, my desperate flight. His consciousness reached toward me across the distance. I'm coming, I sent back. I have it. I'm coming. His relief flooded the bond, mixed with fierce worry. The landscape blurred. My horse's hooves rang against stone as we climbed higher into the mountains. Behind me, I could still hear pursuit, but it was fading, Raphael successfully drawing them away. Dawn was breaking when Ironhold's gates came into view. I crossed the dragon's spine at full gallop. The gates swung open as I approached. They'd been watching for me. I burst through into the courtyard and nearly fell from the saddle. Giovanni was there. He must have felt my approach through the bond, must have been waiting since I'd entered his territory. I dismounted badly, my legs buckling, and thrust the pack toward him. The chain, I gasped. Raphael, he stayed behind, drew them away. Giovanni's arms caught me before I fell. Through the bond, I felt his relief so intense it was almost painful. Raphael knows how to survive, he said roughly, pulling me against his chest. You kept your promise. You came back. Marco appeared, taking the pack, unwrapping the chain with reverent hands. It's real, he breathed. After all these years, Giovanni pulled me closer, his face buried in my hair, his whole body trembling with reaction. I felt everything he'd held back while I was gone. The terror, the rage at himself for letting me go, the overwhelming relief that I'd survived. The moon rises tonight, I said against his chest. We have hours to prepare, yes. He pulled back, his amber eyes burning, and thanks to you, we'll face it with every advantage. The bond and the chain together. Constantine approached. My lord, scouts report movement in the valley. They'll be watching when the moon rises. Let them watch. Giovanni's voice was cold, absolute. He lifted the silver chain. Tonight we show Duke Alexei what happens when he underestimates the north. His eyes found mine across the distance. We show him that some wolves cannot be chained, only loved. Before we go any further, if this story has pulled you in, if you feel the tension, the danger, the connection forming between them, stay with me. Because from this point on, nothing unfolds the way it should. The day passed in terrible slowness. I slept for a few hours. When I woke, the sun had begun its descent. I felt Giovanni's awareness sharpening, the curse stirring. Marta came with clothes I hadn't seen before. A dress of deep gray, sturdy rather than beautiful, with reinforced seams. Clothing meant to withstand violence. "The Duke requests your presence in the lower hall at sunset," she said quietly. "The transformation will take place there. Will there be witnesses?" The Pack's inner circle, and Duke Alexi's representatives, positioned outside the fortress walls where they can observe but not interfere. So it was to be a spectacle after all. I dressed carefully. The mate marks on my collarbone and wrist had darkened, almost black now, pulsing faintly. As the sun touched the horizon, I made my way to the lower hall. The space had been transformed. The symbols on the floor glowed with fresh paint, torches burned at intervals, and at the chamber's center stood a circle marked in silver, a boundary. A space where the wolf would be contained, or where I would die trying to contain it. The Pack's leaders stood along the walls, Constantine with his hand on his sword, Marco with an expression carved from granite, Serena with her ancient eyes seeing too much. Giovanni was already there. He stood at the circle's edge, stripped to the waist, his body marked by scars. The silver chain hung around his neck, its links gleaming against his skin. His amber eyes found me across the distance, and through the bond I felt his turbulent emotions, fear and need and desperate hope tangled together. "Alara," he said, my name rough in his throat. I crossed to him. "I'm here. You don't have to be. Even now you could go to the upper levels." "No." I stepped into the circle. "We do this together." That was the promise. His hand lifted, cupping my face with a gentleness that contradicted the violence building beneath his skin. "If I hurt you, you can't know that." I pressed my fingers to his lips, silencing him. "The bond is stronger. Trust it. Trust me." Outside, a bell began to toll, deep, resonant notes marking the sun's final descent. Giovanni's whole body tensed. Through the bond, I felt the curse surge forward like a wave. "It's beginning," he ground out, stepping back. "Stay at the circle's edge. No matter what happens, don't leave the circle, but don't come closer until I call for you." I nodded, moving to the circle's boundary and sinking to my knees. The transformation started slowly. Giovanni's breathing quickened, harsh and labored. His hands curled into fists, nails lengthening into claws. The muscles beneath his skin began to shift, bones cracking and reforming with sounds that made my stomach turn. He threw his head back and screamed, a sound caught between human agony and animal rage. The silver chain blazed bright around his neck, its magic fighting to ease what couldn't be stopped. But even with its aid, the transformation was brutal, violent. Through the bond I felt everything. The agony of bones breaking and mending, the rage of the curse demanding surrender, the terror of the man trapped inside. Giovanni dropped to his hands and knees, his spine arching as it lengthened and reformed. Dark fur rippled across his skin, spreading like oil on water. His face elongated, jaw cracking and reshaping into something that could tear and rend. I wanted to go to him, wanted to offer comfort, but I held my ground. Let the transformation complete. The wolf won't recognize you until it's fully present. The sounds of breaking bones seemed to last forever. I felt his consciousness fragmenting, the man being buried beneath something older, more primal. The silver chain flared brighter, its ancient magic wrapping around the curse. But the curse had grown strong over 5 years without it. Giovanni's body convulsed as two forces warred for dominance. Finally, the sounds of breaking bones ceased, the screams faded to growls, and where Giovanni had been, a wolf stood. It was massive, easily the size of a warhorse, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb light. Amber eyes glowed in the torchlit chamber, intelligent and wild. The silver chain still hung around its neck, the only evidence of what it had been. The wolf's gaze swept the chamber, assessing threats with predatory focus. Then it saw me. Every muscle in its body went still. Through the bond, I felt recognition slam into place. Mate, anchor, mine. The wolf took a step toward me, its movements fluid and deadly. Another step, its eyes never leaving my face. I stayed on my knees, keeping my posture low and non-threatening, meeting its eyes without challenge but without fear. Not this time, I reminded myself. This time I don't freeze. "I'm here," I said softly, using the bond to project calm. "I'm not leaving." The wolf stopped at the circle's center, so close I could feel the heat radiating from its body. Up close it was even larger than I'd thought, all power and barely restrained violence. It lowered its massive head, scenting me from mere inches away. I felt its breath hot against my face, my throat. my collarbone where the mate marks lay. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee from a predator that could kill me with a single snap of its jaws. But I held perfectly still. The memory of my failure flashed through my mind, freezing during training Giovanni's disappointed eyes. Not this time. The wolf's tongue rasped across my cheek, tasting, confirming, recognizing the bond written into my skin. Then it made a sound, not quite a growl, not quite a whine, and pressed its massive head against my chest. Slowly, carefully, I lifted my hands and touched it. The fur was coarse under my fingers, the muscles beneath like iron. The wolf's body radiated heat like a forge, its heartbeat thundering so hard I could feel it through my palms. But it didn't pull away. It leaned into my touch, that strange sound rumbling deeper in its chest. I felt the man buried beneath the beast, still present, still aware, still fighting to maintain control with every fiber of his being. "I have you," I sent through the connection. "You're not alone." The wolf's eyes closed briefly, and I felt Giovanni's overwhelming relief. "Good." Serena's voice came from the circle's edge, quiet but approving. "The bond holds. The wolf recognizes its mate," but even as she spoke, the wolf's body tensed. Its head snapped toward the chamber's entrance, ears flattening against its skull. A growl built in its chest, deep, threatening, territorial. I felt what it sensed. Intruders, approaching the lower hall with hostile intent. The doors burst open. 3 men entered, wearing Alexi's colors, their faces twisted with calculated aggression. They'd breached the fortress, and now they stood in the wolf's domain, deliberately violating its territory. This was planned, a provocation designed to trigger exactly what happened next. "See?" One of them called, clearly speaking to observers beyond the door. "The Duke has lost control. The beast..." The wolf exploded into motion. It was on the first man before he could finish speaking, jaws closing around his shoulder and shaking him like a doll. The man screamed. Blood sprayed across stone. The other 2 men scrambled backward, their rehearsed bravado shattering. "No!" I lunged forward, grabbing the silver chain around the wolf's neck. "Giovanni, stop!" The wolf released the man, who collapsed, bleeding but alive, and spun toward me. For a terrible moment, I saw nothing in those amber eyes but rage and hunger. The man was gone, buried beneath pure predatory instinct. This was the moment, the test I'd failed before. Terror clawed at my throat. Every survival instinct screamed at me to run. But I didn't freeze. Instead, I pulled hard on the bond, harder than I'd ever pulled before. Reached past the wolf's rage, past the curse's hunger, down to where Giovanni's consciousness flickered like a candle in a storm. "I'm here. I'm yours. You know me." The wolf's snarl faltered. I pressed my forehead against its muzzle, my hand still gripping the silver chain, feeling the ancient metal grow warm beneath my palms. "I know you're angry. They invaded your territory, threatened your pack." I kept my voice low, soothing, while inside I poured everything I had through the bond. "But you're stronger than the rage, stronger than the curse." Through the connection, I felt Giovanni fighting his way back to the surface, using my presence as an anchor to claw past the wolf's dominance. The chain helped, its magic intertwining with the bond, creating a double tether holding him to humanity. The wolf's breathing slowed. Its eyes, when they met mine again, held more awareness, more him. "That's it," I whispered. "Come back to me. I'm right here." The wolf lowered its head, pressing against me again, and through the bond I felt Giovanni's exhaustion, his desperate need for reassurance that he hadn't failed. "You didn't hurt me," I said quietly. "You protected your territory and stopped when I asked. That's control, Giovanni. That's proof the bond works." Constantine had moved to the intruders, his sword drawn. "These men will be removed, punished for violating the Duke's hall during the sacred transformation." Marco appeared at the entrance. "Alexi's representatives are withdrawing. They've seen enough to know the transformation was violent, but also enough to see the bond holding, to witness the Duke maintaining control despite deliberate provocation. More than that, they'd seen me pull him back from the edge, seen the bond work exactly as it was supposed to." The wolf remained close to me, never more than a few feet away, its massive body a wall of muscle and dark fur between me and the rest of the chamber. "Clear the hall," Serena commanded. "The night is long and the Duke needs peace." The pack leaders filed out slowly, leaving only Serena at the entrance. The night stretched long. The wolf paced the circle's boundary, restless with energy it couldn't expend. Sometimes it would stop and stare at the entrance, listening to sounds I couldn't hear. Sometimes it would return to me, pressing close, seeking reassurance through touch. Through it all, I stayed present. I talked to it, meaningless words about nothing and everything. About the stars, about my mother's garden, about how the wolf furs in Giovanni's chambers were softer than anything I'd ever touched. I touched it constantly, my fingers moving through coarse fur, mapping the powerful body that housed my husband's soul. Each touch reinforced the bond, reminded the wolf who I was, what we'd built together. As the night deepened, I felt the man rising closer to the surface. The wolf's movements became less instinctive, more deliberate. Its eyes held more intelligence, more recognition. When it looked at me now, I saw Giovanni looking back, aware, present, fighting to maintain control until the moon set. Dawn was still hours away when it finally lay down fully, its massive head resting on its paws. Through the bond, I felt Giovanni's voice, faint but present. "Stay. I'm not going anywhere," I promised. I lay down beside the wolf, my back pressed against its side, feeling its heartbeat strong and steady through fur and muscle. The heat radiating from its body was overwhelming, but comforting. Safe. For the first time since entering this chamber, I let my eyes close. And I slept. When I woke, gray light was filtering through high windows. The wolf was gone. Giovanni knelt beside me in human form, naked and shaking, the silver chain still around his neck. Blood marked his hands, the intruder's blood, but his eyes were clear, focused, utterly human. "You stayed," he said hoarsely. "I promised I would." He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. Through the bond, I felt everything he couldn't say, gratitude and wonder and something deeper, more profound. He'd survived the transformation. The bond had held. And I was alive, unharmed, still his. "You didn't freeze," he said against my hair. "When the wolf turned on you, you didn't freeze." "No," I agreed. "I didn't." I felt his pride, his relief, his certainty that he'd chosen right. Marco appeared at the circle's edge, carefully averting his eyes. "My lord, Duke Alexei's representatives left before dawn. They returned to their camp to make their report. Giovanni didn't release me. What message will they carry? That the Northern Duke controls the curse, that his bond is strong, that his mate stood against a transformed alpha and lived." Marco's expression held something like respect. "That any challenge to your leadership would be ill-advised." I felt Giovanni's grim satisfaction. We'd done it. We'd proven the bond worked, that the silver chain combined with our connection was enough to maintain control. We'd beaten Alexei's trap, and my father's betrayal had failed. "Come," Giovanni said, helping me to my feet. "We need to rest. Both of us." 3 days after the full moon, a raven arrived. It bore my father's seal. I stared at the black wax, my fingers trembling with barely contained rage as Marco handed it to me. Giovanni's hand covered mine. "You don't have to read it." "Yes, I do." I broke the seal. "Alara, word has reached me of your successful performance during the full moon. Duke Alexei speaks highly of your control over the Northern Duke's affliction. It seems you've proven more useful than anticipated. I write to extend an invitation. Lady Emma and I are hosting a gathering in 1 month's time. As my daughter and the Duchess of Ironhold, your presence would be appropriate. Your father, Baron Ferraro." I read it twice, each word stoking the fire building in my chest. "He wants me to come home," I said flatly, "to parade me in front of his allies like a prize he's won." I felt Giovanni's cold fury. He's positioning himself, using your success to elevate his own status, and he thinks I'll comply. I set down the letter. That I'll forget everything he's done. Marco leaned forward. "This could be an opportunity to reclaim what's mine," I interrupted, meeting Giovanni's amber eyes. "The silver chain was my mother's by right. My father stole it, sold it, conspired to use it against you. It's time he learned what that theft cost him." "What are you proposing?" Constantine asked. "I'm proposing we accept the invitation. All of us." I gestured to encompass the pack leaders. The Duke and his Duchess, arriving with appropriate escort. Understanding rippled through the room. "You want to confront him," Serena said quietly, "publicly. I want justice, for my mother, for every person harmed by the Baron's greed." I looked at Giovanni. "But I won't do it without your blessing." Giovanni was silent for a long moment. Duke Alexei failed to undermine us during the full moon, he said finally. But he won't stop trying. As long as your father remains allied with Southern interests, he's a threat. Exactly. And you believe confronting him publicly will sever that alliance. I believe showing the Northern Pact's strength, showing what happens when someone steals from us, will make others think twice. I held his gaze. My father thinks I'm still the powerless girl he sent away. Let him discover what I've become. Giovanni's lips curved in something predatory. Then we accept his invitation. And we remind the Baron why stealing from wolves is unwise. The next weeks passed in preparation. We gathered evidence, letters from the original wedding negotiations, testimony from elders who remembered my mother's dowry, records of the silver chain's theft. Through it all, Giovanni watched me with something like pride. You've changed, he observed one evening. Since you first arrived, I had to. The girl who came here wouldn't have survived the full moon. No. His hand found mine. But she had the strength to become who you are now. That's what I saw in you from the beginning. I felt his sincerity. What will you do? I asked quietly. When we confront him, I'll stand beside you, let you speak your truth, and then I'll ensure your father understands exactly who he wronged when he sent you north. The journey south took 4 days. We rode through territories that had been closed to me my entire life. Word spread ahead of us, whispers about the alpha who'd survived the full moon, about his mate who'd held the curse at bay. By the time we reached my father's lands, our reputation preceded us. The keep looked smaller than I remembered. We crested the final hill at sunset, and I saw the familiar towers rising against the sky, gray stone, crumbling battlements, the whole structure radiating decline. This was where I'd been raised, where I'd learned to make myself invisible. I felt nothing looking at it now, no nostalgia, no grief, only cold determination. Are you ready? Giovanni asked. Yes. We rode through gates that opened with reluctance. Servants scattered at our approach. My father emerged from the keep, Lady Emma at his side, Katya trailing behind. He'd dressed for the occasion, fine clothing that couldn't hide the bloat of too much wine. His eyes widened when he saw me. I dismounted with Giovanni's help, letting the moment stretch. The expensive gown, the mate marks displayed without shame, the Northern Duke's possessive hand at my back, the 20 armed warriors behind me. Alara, my father said, his voice uncertain. Welcome home. This isn't my home, I replied clearly, my voice carrying across the courtyard. It stopped being my home the day you sold me north to pay your debts. Silence fell like a blade. Lady Emma's expression hardened. Alara, really? Be silent. I didn't raise my voice, but something in my tone made her snap her mouth shut. You have no say in this conversation. You're here to listen. My father's face reddened. Now see here. You're nothing to me, I interrupted. You stopped being my father when you let my mother die alone. When you treated me as a servant in my own home. When you stole from her and lied about it for 20 years. The last words rang across the courtyard like an accusation. My father's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. The silver chain. I stepped forward. My mother's heritage. The relic her grandmother passed down through the bloodline for 300 years. The one you demanded she surrender as proof of her love and loyalty. Around the courtyard, the assembled lords, neighboring nobles my father had invited, leaned forward with sudden interest. That was a gift, my father blustered. Your mother gave it freely. My mother gave it desperately. I cut through his excuses. Because you told her that keeping it meant she still belonged to the North. That true loyalty meant surrendering her old clan's treasures. I moved closer. She loved you, wanted so badly to be valued by you. So she gave you the most sacred thing she possessed. And what did you do? I continued. You took it, locked it in your vault. And when she asked to see it 2 years later, when she was pregnant with me and wanted to reconnect with her heritage, you told her you'd lost it. My father's mouth worked soundlessly. Giovanni stepped forward, his presence radiating controlled menace. Giovanni stepped forward, his presence radiating controlled menace. The warriors behind him shifted, hands moving to weapons. Baron Ferraro. Giovanni's voice was quiet, deadly. The silver chain was never yours to keep. It belonged to the northern clans. To Alara's mother, and through her, to Alara. I don't have it anymore, my father said quickly. I sold it years ago. You're lying. Marco stepped forward, producing documents. Our investigators traced the chain's movement. You kept it in your vault for 18 years. 6 months ago, you sold it to Duke Alexei for a sum large enough to fund your alliance with Southern interests. He spread the documents on a table, receipts, witness testimony, correspondence. You sold my mother's heritage to fund a conspiracy against the people it was meant to protect, I said. You took something sacred, and you sold it to a man who wanted to use its absence to engineer my husband's failure. You want to know the worst part? I said quietly. My mother died asking about that chain. In her final days, she begged the priests to send word north, to tell the old clans what had been stolen, to ask them to watch over her daughter, because she knew I carried the bloodline, that someday I might return north and reclaim what you'd taken. My voice broke despite my efforts to control it. She died hoping I'd be strong enough to take back what she'd been too desperate for love to protect. Died knowing you'd used her devotion as a weapon. Died believing she'd failed her ancestors by trusting you. Through the bond, I felt Giovanni's fierce pride. I'm sorry, my father said, his voice small. I didn't know it meant so much to her. You knew exactly what it meant. I stepped closer, letting him see the mate marks glowing faintly on my skin. You knew it was sacred. You knew it connected her to 300 years of heritage. That's why you demanded it, to cut her off from her past, to make her fully dependent on you. The courtyard was silent, except for wind rustling through the keep's banners. You sent me north as a tithe, thinking I was worthless, I said. Expendable. A bastard daughter useful only for paying debts you were too cowardly to face yourself. But you made a critical mistake. What mistake? My father whispered. I smiled, cold and sharp as winter wind. You sent northern blood back where it belonged. You gave the Ironhold pack exactly what they needed. Not just an anchor for the curse, but the rightful heir to the silver chain. Someone with a legitimate claim to demand its return. Giovanni's voice joined mine. Your theft 20 years ago set events in motion you couldn't predict. The chain's absence made the curse worse with each generation. Made my transformations more violent. His amber eyes burned. But instead of the bride you promised, you sent northern blood and the legal right to reclaim stolen property. I chose her immediately, bonded her, made her Duchess of Ironhold and heir to everything her mother should have inherited. Understanding rippled through the assembled lords. This wasn't just about a stolen relic. This was about justice delayed 20 years finally coming due. The silver chain has been recovered, I said clearly. Taken back from Duke Alexei's camp where you sold it. It rests in Ironhold now, returned to the bloodline that forged it. My father's face had gone pale. Alara, please, let's discuss this privately. No, the word cracked like a whip. You wanted me present for your celebration. You wanted to show your allies how well you'd married off your unwanted daughter. I smiled. So let them see. Let them witness what happens when you wrong the Northern Pack. Your alliance with Duke Alexei is broken, Giovanni said. He bet on my failure, witnessed my success. He will not risk open conflict with Ironhold now. My father looked around desperately, seeing his support crumble. What do you want? He asked hoarsely. Justice, I said simply. My mother's lands, the dowry you claimed when you married her, revert to me. Her bloodline, her northern heritage, her rights, all of it transfers to Ironhold. Those lands are part of my holdings. Those lands were hers by inheritance, Marco interrupted. The same lands that were promised as dowry to the Duke's family 18 years ago. He spread the documents. Original marriage contracts, land deeds, testimony from witnesses. You can transfer them willingly, I said, acknowledging your theft and making restitution. Or we can take this to the regional council, where I'll present evidence of your conspiracy with Duke Alexei, your theft of sacred northern relics, and your breach of wedding contracts. Through the bond, I felt Giovanni's fierce approval. One of the lords, an older man with a scarred face, stepped forward. Is this true? You maintained control during the full moon? Yes, I answered. The bond held. The curse was contained. The lord nodded slowly, then turned to my father. You conspired with Duke Alexei to engineer the Northern Duke's failure? My father's mouth worked soundlessly. The letter, I said quietly. Marco produced it. The lord read it, his expression darkening. You sold a sacred relic to ensure the Duke's transformation would be violent, to create a spectacle that would justify Duke Alexei's territorial ambitions. I was protecting my interests. You were committing treason against the northern territories, the Lord said flatly. He looked at me, then at Giovanni. The Duchess's claim to her mother's lands is just. More than just, it's restitution for crimes committed. Other lords nodded agreement. They'd come for a celebration, but what they'd witnessed was a reckoning. My father looked around desperately. You would ruin me, he said to me, voice breaking. I would take back what you stole, I replied. What you've always stolen, from my mother, from me, from the north. I let the silence stretch. Choose quickly, Baron, I said finally. My patience is limited. He chose survival. Within the hour, documents were drawn up transferring my mother's ancestral lands to my control. Not vast holdings, but rich territories in the northern valleys. Forests thick with game. Streams running with silver fish. Land that had been waiting 18 years. My father signed with shaking hands while his allies watched. The neighboring lords who'd witnessed everything would spread the word. The Baron Ferraro had conspired with southern interests, stolen from the northern pack, and been brought to justice by his own daughter. The message was clear, the North remembered. The North reclaimed what was stolen. And crossing the Ironhold pack carried consequences that could reach across generations. As twilight deepened, Giovanni and I stood in what had been my mother's garden, now overgrown and neglected, but still holding traces of the beauty she'd cultivated. How do you feel? He asked quietly. Free. I leaned against him. I thought I'd feel vindicated, triumphant, but mostly I just feel finished with this place. Then we leave tomorrow. Return home, Ironhold, with its fierce mountains and cold halls, the fortress where I'd been transformed from invisible girl into duchess, into mate, into someone who commanded wolves. Yes, I agreed. Let's go home. That night we didn't stay in the keep. Giovanni had our camp set up in the valley beyond my father's gates. I stood at the edge of camp, looking back at the keep one final time. Katya appeared from the shadows. I didn't think you'd come, I said. I wanted to see you, to say... She stopped. You were right, about everything. Father used you, used all of us. Her voice dropped. I'm sorry, for how I treated you. I studied my half-sister, seeing genuine remorse. You were as trapped as I was. Just in a different cage. Maybe. But you found a way out. She gestured toward the camp, toward Giovanni's silhouette against firelight. You became something more. So can you. If you choose it. She smiled sadly. I don't have your strength. You have your own. You just have to decide to use it. We stood in silence for a moment. Be happy, Katya said finally. With him. With your life in the north. Be everything Father said you couldn't be. I will. She disappeared back into darkness. Giovanni found me there, wrapping his cloak around my shoulders. Saying goodbye? He asked. Saying good riddance. He laughed, genuine, warm. Then let's be done with it. Tomorrow we ride north, and we never look back. I felt his certainty, his conviction that our future lay in the mountains, in the pack we were building, in the life we'd carved from blood and magic and desperate hope. We returned to the camp together, and that night I slept wrapped in my husband's arms. We'd won, not just the confrontation with my father, but something larger. We'd proven the bond was unbreakable, that the curse could be controlled, that the Northern Pack's strength came not from violence alone, but from the connections we forged. When dawn came, we rode north toward Ironhold, toward home, and I never looked back. We arrived at Ironhold 4 days later to celebrations that eclipsed even our wedding feast. The pack had prepared a welcome that spoke of pride and joy, banners flying from every tower, fires burning bright in the courtyard, voices raised in songs that echoed off the mountains. They'd heard what happened. Word had spread faster than we'd ridden. The Duchess had reclaimed her heritage. The Duke's bond had been proven. The Northern Pack had shown the South that wolves remembered their debts. As we crossed the dragon's spine, I looked at the fortress rising before us, and felt something settle deep in my bones. This was home, not the place I'd been born, but the place I'd been reborn. Here, in these cold halls, I discovered who I truly was. Here, I'd learned that strength came not from being invulnerable, but from surviving what tried to break you. Here, I'd found love in the last place I'd expected, in the arms of a man cursed to be a monster, who'd chosen me when no one else would. Giovanni helped me dismount, his hands lingering on my waist. Welcome home, Duchess, he said softly. Welcome home, my lord. I felt everything he couldn't say in front of the assembled pack. That I'd exceeded every hope he'd held. That I'd become essential in ways that went far beyond anchoring the curse, that somewhere between the binding ceremony and now, he'd fallen irrevocably in love with me. I reached up, cupping his face, letting him feel through our connection that I knew, that I felt the same, that what we'd built was stronger than any curse, any chain, any force in the world. Marco called for the feast to begin, and the pack surged forward with celebrations that would last long into the night. Later, as we lay tangled in wolf furs while the fire burned low, Giovanni pulled me close. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave enough to stay, for choosing this life when you could have run." His hands framed my face. "For loving me despite the curse, despite everything." "I didn't choose the curse," I said, smiling. "I chose you, the man and the wolf together. All of you." He kissed me then, deep and claiming and tender, and through the bond I felt how completely we'd merged, how impossible it was now to tell where one ended and the other began. We'd started as stranger and sacrifice. We'd become mate and anchor, and now finally we were simply two people who'd found in each other what they'd been missing all along. Love, partnership, home. I pressed my hand over Giovanni's heart, feeling it beat steady and strong beneath my palm. "I love you," I whispered into the darkness. Through the bond I felt his answer, wordless but absolute, and I knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges awaited, we would face them as we'd faced everything else. Together, bound by blood and magic and choice, strong enough to chain a beast, brave enough to love a monster, fierce enough to forge a legend. The Alpha's tithe had been paid, and in paying it, I'd become something no one expected, not a sacrifice, but a sovereign. To my beautiful listeners out there, you are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to become despite it. Alara's journey proves that transformation isn't about escaping your past. It's about refusing to let that past define your future. She didn't erase her trauma or pretend it didn't matter. She used the survival skills it taught her, honored the mother who died, and became powerful enough to ensure no one could treat her that way again. The story ultimately argues that real freedom comes not from being rescued, but from becoming strong enough to rescue yourself, and then using that strength to protect others. If this story caught your attention, thank you for staying with me. Stories like this take heart to write, and knowing someone is truly listening makes all the difference. I write to stir something inside you, romance, emotion, and moments that linger long after the story ends. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe, so these stories don't get lost in a sea of voices, and I can keep writing them for you.